Awesome. Thanks so much, y'all, for being here. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Michelle Johnston. I'm a business professor next door at Loyola, and I'm an author of The Seismic Shift in Leadership, and I'm a podcast host of The Seismic Shift. Two reasons why I'm really excited to be here today. The most important reason is because you know the phrase, if you can see it, you believe it, and then you can become it. Right here is Peter Ricchiuti, and he's been my role model. And I wanted to be a business professor like him. I wanted to be a speaker like him, and I wanted to be a podcast host. And he has mentored me throughout the years and has been an incredible inspiration. Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much for your support.
I think you could have done better.
And the second reason why I'm excited to be here is because this time last year, in this room, in this session, Peter moderated my first book talk with the New Orleans Book Festival, my first book, The Seismic Shift in Leadership, and it was just a wonderful experience. Until afterwards when I had to compete with Douglas Brinkley. And that was really awkward. But other than that, Peter and Annette today, they have this brand new book, which is super cool. And one of the things that you said in your forward, which I really appreciated, you said, I'm the one in the room who loves talking about business. And I would imagine that if you're attending today's session, you too love talking about business. And they identified 30 super cool entrepreneurs in our region doing great things. So as you know, or don't know, Peter Ricchiuti is the host of Out to Lunch podcast, and it's been on the air for 14 years. How many of y'all love this podcast? I do. Yeah, give it up. Thank you. Again, he just has such a beautiful, as my grandfather used to call it, a knack of the vernacular. And he just brings stories to life and vivid imagery. And then, of course, we have Annette, who's been with the Times-Picayune for years. She's been a writer her whole entire life. Everybody needs Annette on his or her team. For sure, again, just to bring stories to life. So the purpose is twofold today. Number one, we want to bring this book to life for you, and we want to get you fired up about what's going on with entrepreneurship in the city. There are probably many of the entrepreneurs. Give it up for Ann Parnes, who just walked in the room after hello. She's one of the entrepreneurs in the book, and we really hope to bring her stories to life. So, you ready for the first question?
I think so.
All right, so you've been hosting this incredibly successful podcast and NPR radio show, Out to Lunch, for 14 years. Why now? Why did you write this book now?
Well, you know, we became, right after Katrina, the #1 city in the country for young entrepreneurs. And that sounds so weird because, you know, Boston and New York you think of, and San Francisco. But the reason that happened is, one, we were a blank slate, and the other was that those cities are really expensive, and young entrepreneurs basically don't have any money. And so, and we were super hip and cool and fun. And so we started thinking about it, my producer and I, Grant Morris. But what finally put us over the top was I went to a, you know, we're always tough on ourselves in New Orleans. I mean, you know, kind of, it's the potholes and everything. But finally what got me is I went to a friend's birthday party, and his father came out, and he knew what I did, and he looks at me and he goes, you know, Exxon left. It was like, yeah, so it was like 1985, you know? And so we got to move on. And so that made me angry enough to create the show.
Okay, that's brilliant. I didn't see that coming. And so why now? Why then do you put into print, and how in the world do you curate the top 30 entrepreneurs to put in this book? Because he's interviewed 1,100 entrepreneurs. So how do you narrow it down to the top 30?
You were the prime narrower.
That was a
Annette.
process. We looked for a variety of stories and people that were just really interesting and inspiring. And we had to weed through, you know, many, many hours of tapes and lots of interviews. But and there were many interesting stories that didn't quite make it. But you know, of course, we wanted to keep it a good size. And I think we came up with probably a really good, interesting set of stories that sort of represents the diversity of the business landscape here.
And by the way, it's they weren't necessarily the most successful ones. Some of them are no longer with us, but we thought they were the most interesting, and so I think that was that worked out. By the way, Annette is a real is really tough. The first book we wrote, Stocks Under Rocks, she would have me come to her porch for 3 hours every Sunday morning, and I couldn't leave, couldn't go to the bathroom, and that book never would have been written if it wasn't for Annette. And this one, we went through a lot. We started writing together, then COVID hit, and we started meeting at my house in the backyard at a round table where we were each 15 feet apart. It was like, you know what's interesting? Is that one? But it all came together.
Okay, then that's a perfect segue to, we want to hear some of the stories, right? Tell us, first of all, what's happening in the landscape of entrepreneurship in our region, because this is not just New Orleans, this is not just Louisiana, this is our region. You also have Out to Lunch out in Baton Rouge, right? So get this audience excited. There's really cool stuff happening. Let's hear about it.
By the way, the people in Lafayette are even nicer than the people in New Orleans. It's just so, I'm not just saying that for you. I remember we had a show. We always do it at a restaurant, and so I got there on a Saturday morning. It was just me. My producer didn't come yet. And my sound man didn't come yet. And one guy comes, and he used to work in the oil field, and he's come up with a product. It's a rum product called Sweet Crude. And so he was there, and we were chatting. And then the guy from Bayou Teche Beer, you know, that 18 on the case, he comes, and I don't know if they know each other at all. And the beer guy says to the rum guy, he goes, "Ooh, the people you see when you don't have a gun." And I'm like, whoa, what's gonna happen? And then it was like, next thing was something like, "You still seeing my sister?" You know, it's like, apparently it's Cajun for "I love you" or so. But
I want to hear, particularly because I see Anne in the audience, and Anne is a really good friend and an entrepreneur, and you chose her company to highlight not only on Out to Lunch, but in the book. So let's talk about matchmaking and Anne's story.
Yeah, and Anne, thanks for coming. We get paid by the head, and this is terrific. So Anne was one of your big favorites.
Right. So Anne's story kind of grabbed me because she said that she has been sort of matching people up since about 4th grade. And she was one of those people that, I guess, passed the note that said, "Hey, he likes you," or whatever. And so she went on to just have this knack for understanding, you know, how people get along and which people might do well with other people. But she also has like a very sophisticated way of, I think, understanding what people need and what they're comfortable with in a maybe a first date. And she's, you know, it was a successful business that came out of a personal passion, and that was kind of what we were looking for.
And since then, Anne has developed kind of a new subdivision called, let's see.
After
Hello. I knew it had Hello. The After Hello, which kind of helps you, guide you through the next part. And she's terrific. And by the way, online dating, it doesn't have that really much of a success percentage, because you have to define success. But it is, and the other thing I loved about having her on the show, she said something that I assume is totally true, which is people when they're dating tend to be attracted to the same kind of person that didn't work out last time. And so I think she's absolutely right.
So very true. One of the stories that really resonated with me, and she wanted to be here, but she couldn't for personal reasons. Let's put you all in this scenario. This is a mom of young children, and she travels a lot for work. And she comes back from a trip, and there's just piles of laundry, right? But there's also Little League, baseball, and ballet, and things you have to do. You don't have 8 hours to spend in the house for laundry. And so she developed, based on the Uber system, she developed a company called Hamper. And so it takes our peers in our neighborhood, those who have to stay home all day and do a darn good job, right, with laundry, and we get to use them like Uber does for laundry, and she is crushing it. Laurel wishes she could be here. Tell us more about Hamper.
So the first thing I think I should say is that Peter had a really good idea for the people who handle the washing in this equation. He thinks they should be called hamsters.
Yes, which
No E.
is not accepted.
No E.
As
So I love this story because it takes into account the fact that some people, you know, don't have time for that kind of thing or would prefer not to have to do it. And then other people who are in a great situation where they're home all the time because maybe they're taking care of other family members, and they can pick up that task. And she also said, she insisted that it be a flat fee per bag. Like, she's like, most places where you drop off your laundry weigh it, and they charge by the pound. She's like, I have no idea how much my laundry weighs. So it's all about bags. You put the bags on your porch, somebody picks them up, they return them in 24 hours, and you have clean laundry. And it sounds like a dream to me.
And it really is some. Now, sometimes you hear about companies that'll do something with your laundry, but all those go to a central processing unit. These go back. He or she does it at home, which is I think is pretty terrific. And I think they're now in 15 cities. It is really something. My neighbor used it. I only saw this about a week ago. And the person comes with a car, and you know those metal signs you can put on the door? It just said, laundry sucks. And I thought, all right, so they're getting at the right angle and everything. I think if I had had it when I was single, I could have gone a lot further in the investment banking world, because via that pile, it's like, it doesn't look bad as the blue one, and but she's wonderful, and she is killing it.
She's totally crushing it. And when I look at Tiffany and Amy, right, who are crushing it at Ochsner in the second row here, and Tiffany just had her second baby, it's one of those things where I'm sure you're thinking, I need Hamper, and you didn't even know how much you needed it until you just heard about it today. And one of the things that your stories, at least it did for me when I was reading the book, especially services like the Uber of laundry, is how much New Orleans is so good at connection. And this time last year when I was doing my book talk, I said, we're actually the best. I've lived in a ton of different cities. I think we're the best at connection. And how nice that we have entrepreneurs who are utilizing each other's strengths, our neighbors' strengths, maybe that aren't our strengths. And we're all in this together, and we can all rise together. I do love that.
I have to tell you, my producer, there's 4 of us on the show, and 3 of us thought this was the greatest idea. And there's always a different one. My producer's from New Zealand, and he said, I would never do that. Some stranger touching my undies. So, I don't know. But he got about a 75% hit rate.
That's Grant. He needs to get over that for sure. I'm interested in what happened to Turbo Squid. Talk about a successful story. Where are they now? What are they doing?
They've been bought out. And this is the concept of platforms, which is a great business to build. You've got all these people around the world, and they're artists, and they draw things in 3 dimension for movies, video games, and all. But they've done these great things, but who do they sell it to? And so Turbo Squid created a platform so that all the movie theaters, the video games, all of that, it's sort of like a stock exchange. You can't walk down the aisle of Rouse's and sell 100 shares of IBM. I don't know who has that. But what they're doing in there is they get them together. So if you need a 3D dimensional bear, it's right there, and then Turbo Squid took half of it, and the artist took the other half, and then it got bought out. But it's a great story. I remember asking him, I said, where have I seen your stuff? And he goes, Eiffel Tower in Ratatouille. It's always so funny what they are. But he gets them together, and frankly, the artist wouldn't get anything, if it wasn't for creating that platform.
So who bought them, and what's the money doing now? Huh.
Well, the money doing now is something that's a big picture story, and that is when companies get bought out, what usually happens is, first they take the millions of dollars and they go home, and then they spend about 2 weeks at home, and then that great Southern expression, their wife says, I married you for better, I married you for worse, but I didn't marry you for lunch. And so, plus these guys, men and women, they all have 5 different ideas back of their head too. So, but I can't remember who bought them, but I think it was.
Yeah, who bought them?
That's right, Shutterstock, which you see when you're trying to steal photos on the internet. I have a lot of things that just say Shutterstock on them. So, then of course that acquisition made a lot of sense.
And we'll come back to more individual stories, but I think this is a natural progression to the next question of, okay, we've had a couple of significant success stories of selling, right? And so are we in a turning point? Are we in an inflection point in our entrepreneurial ecosystem right now?
I really do think we are, because if you look at the great tech cities like our entrepreneurial cities like Austin or San Francisco, what happens is you start some companies, they get bought out, and that new money goes into new ideas and also to fund other startups, because that's the kind of people they are. They're not, they're not conservative. They realize that some of this stuff isn't going to work. They're risk takers, and that's what feeds the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So I'm very encouraged. The other 2 were, we had Lucid get bought out.
Oh, yeah.
By the Swedish company, and the other guest said, and he agreed to stay on for like 6 months, something like that, or a year. And the other guy said, that's until they make you eat fish for breakfast, and then that's going to be it. So it's for the new Swedish company. So it is something.
So we have 3 big success stories, or at least that have been on Out to Lunch, that have sold.
Yeah, Level Set being the other.
Level Set being the
Which
third.
this is the child of the Melba's couple.
Let's talk about Melba's. That was one, to me, that was one of the most interesting stories. They really sell the most po' boys in the country? That's their tagline in the world. They sell the most how many? I haven't had a Melba's po' boy. Have you? I haven't had a Melba's po' boy.
I don't know.
I feel horrible.
How would you know that? I don't know.
Well, so their tagline is they sell the most po' boys than anybody in the
That's
world.
checkable right there.
Right.
Yeah, that,
very
you
tough.
should go out.
And we're the only ones that make po' boys. So they, but besides that,
It's a great story
great
to
line.
tell us. Yeah.
Well, they're a very interesting couple. They married very young. She was a teen mom. They had no money, but they did have some family support, so they were able to start. Did they start Melba's first with their little?
No, what they
laundromat
started
with
first
that?
was Wagner's
Oh,
Meat.
Wagner's Meat. You
Okay.
can't beat Wagner's Meat.
All
Okay,
right,
how
so
many
we
of y'all
went-
remember
right,
that
right,
tagline?
Right.
So
And
we-
now there is
yeah.
no more Wagner's.
No more
But they
Wagner's
sell
Meat.
the bumper stickers at
I'm
Melba's.
sure
so
they're
come on.
making more money off merch than they ever made off Wagner's, but they still were a success, and then they started Melba's. But since we live in the Tulane neighborhood, you will still see you can't beat Wagner's Meat. Bumper stickers, T-shirts everywhere, and you can buy them at Melba's. And they also have a very cool literacy program at that place where they give
Offers?
away free books to people in the neighborhood. They invite authors to come in and speak just about every Saturday. They have a laundromat with like famous authors on the washing machines.
It's
and
so cool.
It's a very interesting, quirky, very New Orleans kind of business.
It's so quirky that and so cool about New Orleans that both when they were running for president, both the Hillary and Bill went there, and so did Michelle and Barack. They went there for like photo shoots and look around. I was talking to the son, the guy from Level Set. He's a genius, and he said, I said, your mom and dad are the most promotional people I've ever seen in my life. He goes, did you ever look up at the ceiling? I said, no. He goes, there's ads up there too.
You know, out of the 30 entrepreneurs in your book, so many of them do provide services that we all need. And one of the most interesting stories that I now have a 20-year-old, so this was a while ago, but a bunch of some of my best friends in this room right here, we have coffee every Monday morning, and we've raised our children together, and shout out to Coffee Group. And one of the topics in the 18, 19, 20 years now that we've met, raising our kids together, was that awful phase of lice. Do you remember? And it was mortifying.
Rich,
and
poor,
it does not. Yeah, right. It was mortified. And what prompted this woman, who the knits story,
Yeah, the nitpickers.
the nitpickers, what prompted her, what I found so interesting about the story, was not necessarily this is a problem to be solved, I'm going to start a company. She flew to Houston, and she was just so, to get it fixed, to get the lice fixed, and she was so mortified, and she didn't want other women to have to go through this experience, and so she started this company. Tell us more about that.
So the founder had 5 children, or she had 4 children. She was pregnant with the 5th, and they all got lice, which is what happens. They all get lice at the same time. You got a whole house full. You got to like wash everything, dry everything, vacuum everything. It's a complete nightmare. And she was pregnant, so she didn't want to use like strong chemicals on the kids' hair. So she did a lot of research. She talked to people. She did go to Houston to have it taken care of. And she started this business here called Nitpicking in NOLA, which still exists. And they come out in an unmarked vehicle.
Because of the shame, isn't that wild?
And they will, go through your kid's hair, comb it out, deal with the horror that is lice. And it's the prices were really reasonable. I thought, if I were a young mom, I would definitely be tempted. It was like under $200 or something to have that done. So they'll do your whole house and check back with you, and they use products that are non-toxic for kids. So I thought it was just a terrific concept that came out of a real life practical problem, which nobody else has tackled.
And they're now in the North Shore and the Gulf Coast, all the way to Mobile.
Yeah.
So it's It is really a great story. One of the things, I called a couple of mothers just because I thought that would be good for the show, and I asked two of them, how much did it cost? And they said, I have no idea.
Right, it doesn't matter. Whatever it costs, it's worth it.
Think blank check. I don't really remember how it went down.
Yeah, that's true.
Speaking of things that you don't want to do, one of the other success stories in the book. All right, so how many of y'all in here have dogs?
God, you picked that.
Reenie's got 3. Reenie's an entrepreneur of Nola Chill. She's in the audience of Nola Chill right here.
Yeah.
She's got 3 dogs. I only have 1, but for all of us who have dogs, what's one of the worst things you have to do is pick up the...
Yeah.
That's one of the entrepreneurs in this book. Tell us more about the pooper picker uppers.
So this was a really interesting one. He was a returned veteran who really just needed something to do. He needed a business. So he started this business where he offered to come clean up your yard, or say commercial spaces like apartment complex properties, schools, and that kind of thing.
Neighborhood groups, the whole thing.
I'm gonna tell you a joke again. Okay, so the name of the business is,
let's see,
something like
Call of Duty. No.
No, it should have been.
That's the one I wanted to give him,
It
because
was
he was military.
somewhat forgettable, but Peter said it should be Call of Duty.
It should have been,
Yeah.
should have been
So,
Call of Duty.
I can't remember the guy.
And when I
that said-
suggested
yeah.
that, he was so upset, because it really was a better
It was
name.
a much
Yeah.
better
He can
name.
change the
see?
name.
Sure, yeah.
He probably should change.
He
the
should
name.
change. Wait, what
like-
is it? Pooper picker uppers?
No.
What
No,
is it?
poops are us. I
Poops
don't know.
are
I don't
us.
know. I'm making it up now. They,
But yeah, that was that's a service people need. Again,
And
don't
he's
really want to do,
making
and
money
he's
and-
fine with it. So
He said when he was got out of the military, his dad had an idea for him to go into some business that he just hated the idea of, and that's how it started. He said, "Dad, I would rather pick up dog shit than do that." I was like, "Wait a minute, wait, hold on, I got something."
And he started the company.
Yes,
yeah.
I love that story. Okay, so now we kind of segue into what we do really well in Louisiana besides the problems that we need to solve. What do we do well? And I love the story of the pepper guy. Those are some hot peppers.
Oh.
Bring that story to life.
Well, those people are crazy. That's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like good crazy, though?
Talk
Good
about a pet.
Louisiana
Yeah,
crazy?
like out of their mind. Yeah.
you want
Yeah, I'll start.
Go ahead.
There's like this cult around Lafayette that they kind of trying to out hot each other. You know, with what's the word for that? The Scoville. That's the Scoville units, and so they make them they kept hybrid, and they keep getting them to the point where they're just totally inedible. I asked about the ghost peppers, and it was like, oh God, that's nothing. We have things that take the paint off your house, and so we found it very interesting. And they had the one that had the hottest skull units. I can't believe we're having this conversation. Is his wife made like cake and some other things using a tiny bit of it. That went a long way, and but it was cool, and then there was the guy who was on a guest with him. I'm gonna think I'm making this up. He grows penis peppers, and look it up. They look just like penises, and not that they're cylinders. That's not. You look at it, and it's like, holy mother. That's and so I have this personal dream where I just take those seeds and throw them all over New Orleans, and then when I'm long gone, somebody's little kid says to their mother, "How did these get here?" Well, there was a professor at Tulane, and as he began to lose it, something. But that was a fun one.
That's perfect. That reminds me when I was Googling all the wonderful things that Peter Ricchiuti has done in his career. I did not know, but now it makes complete sense that he's known as the country's most entertaining finance professor.
It's not. I mean, that is really like being the tallest short person. It's not really. I love to follow like an actuary at a conference. That's cheating,
And so let's talk about what entrepreneurs, because I'm also assuming that that there's some people in this audience who are like, I want to be an entrepreneur, and I brought up the beginning, if you can see it, you can believe it. If you can believe it, you can become it. So now, what are the common denominators of all these entrepreneurs? If you've got, probably some of your students are in this room like, I want to be Mr. Penis Pepper.
Yes, right. I'm sorry, that's taken, gentlemen.
What are the common denominators?
Why don't we talk about the different things that are...
So I don't think the pepper guys ever like made a ton of money, any of them, because you have to like personally raise those. So, but it's kind of has to be something you're passionate about and are willing to put a lot of time and effort into. And frankly, you also need some money. So a lot of these people borrowed from their families. Even Jane Wolfe and her husband,
Right.
Jane and Scott, they had a little family money. One woman used her tax return. This is
That's
Flirty
right.
Girl, the T-shirt.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes,
Here
let's
in
talk
town.
about that's a
So
So
great.
she started her
great
business with
story.
an income tax return right up against a like mortgage deadline. So like she said her back was against the wall. She had no choice. So I mean, some sense of urgency is also a common denominator, I think.
Yep. I just want to go back to the penis peppers again. Is they those hot peppers, by the way, I'm telling you how hot they are. I should have. When you pick them, you need a hazmat suit with a gas mask. I'm not kidding.
He's not kidding.
No, it's so if you're thinking of growing them at home or whatever, it's there's extra cost, the hazmat thing and everything. So the
I want to go back to Flirty Girl because I shop at Flirty Girl. I love Flirty
Oh, they're
Girl.
great.
Talk about a
Very
great
creative.
representation of the community, great brand identity. So her back was up against the wall. She's facing a mortgage. She uses her tax, and then what?
She
How was the
started a
refund?
T-shirt
Yeah.
shop in the front room of her house, and I think it may have been on Oak Street or some,
Yep.
some small commercial strip here in town, and started selling T-shirts and just, did not give up. And now
Like at 4 stores or
thing about her, she's got a real love of New Orleans, and so everything she does, that's kind of the common denominator. Like everything is about New Orleans and just the sort of lifestyle here and the things people love about New Orleans. So she's really done a great job.
what reminded me of that story is we have a woman on, and she has a company called Badass Balloons, and they're balloons with very racy things on them, and so and they like. I said, what's the one I like? It says, better to be. It's so racy I can't even think of it. But anyway, she's got the balloons, and they're really outrageous, and we're at Commander's Palace, and I cannot bring that woman in the balloons through the first floor. I just think this is going to be the end of the show. So I took her down like the waiters. I said, oh gosh.
Yeah. So again, there was a problem that she wanted to. She was throwing a bachelor or bachelorette party.
A lot of divorce parties too.
And a lot of divorce
Yeah,
parties,
that's
and
what
she
I'm saying.
wanted balloons that said what everybody was feeling, and she couldn't find them, and so she decided to make her own company, Badass Balloons. That's a great
Yeah.
story as well. Again, you can see there's just so much originality and creativity in this community, which is beautiful. So again, let's talk. Let's get the audience fired
Yeah,
up
that's-
about, are we still, you said we're the #1 place for young adults to start
right after,
companies?
young entrepreneurs went right after Katrina, and I think we've still got some momentum here.
That would be great.
I'm
So
the
what do you
one-
think the future looks like?
I'm the most optimistic guy in the
Talk
city
to us.
because I teach really smart kids at Tulane, and I'm there with 2 usually young entrepreneurs every Tuesday. I mean, it's like pinch me, You're definitely going to feel optimistic, and I'm a big boy. I know some of these companies aren't going to make it, and by the way, I am terrible at figuring out which kinds of companies are going to make it. I fall in love with the nutty ones, but it's not entirely my fault because I don't have any financials on them, so that's really the problem. But great idea. I'll give you an example. Crew, the sunglass company, I thought, how are they going to compete with St. Charles Vision and Warby Pucker? And they've done great, so it's not always as obvious as it looks.
Crew Sunglasses is crushing it, and that is another really great success story. They're now going into resort cities. They're exploring Aspen right now, and Palm Beach and Palm Springs, and that makes complete sense. Yeah, they're doing a great job. So I would love to open it up for questions, because I'm sure you all have questions for Annette and Peter, and we've got a microphone in the back, so if you don't mind, we're recording this, so if you don't mind to stand up, and you can go ahead and ask your questions in the back.
Oh, boy.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Andrew Kim. I'm actually no longer a student, but I am an alumni. Great to meet you all today. I've noticed that a lot of the businesses that you spoke about today are relatively innovative, and they tend to offer something that does not exist currently. And I actually was wondering, I myself am an entrepreneur, and I just recently relaunched a business, but it's not particularly innovative. It is, I think, something that would serve the city very, very well. It has to do with high school education in mathematics. But I was actually wondering if I could get some either advice or something that I could get started with in terms of business, because it is relatively new to me.
You know, we have 3 business incubators in the city. You know, and actually they're all started by former students. Idea Village, Propeller, and Fund 17. And I would start by contacting each of them. I want to say that the other thing that's different about New Orleans, and I've heard this from so many guests, they have been in incubators in other cities like Boston and San Francisco. And what happens in the incubators is they're very competitive with each other, like stealing ideas and everything. And of course, New Orleans is the opposite of those incubators. First of all, they all go out for beers later, and they find things, and they get, you know who could use this is John, and they help them out. It's like one of the great New Orleans features, I think. But yeah, those 3, I would start there and see if they
Could you repeat those again?
Idea Village, and then Propeller, and then Fund 17, and I've been on the board of Fund 17, and I think they're great people that run it. If they're not the right one, they'll tell you who is. And
Great, thank you so much.
Sure.
So I'm familiar with Idea Village, which we do have cross-promotion. I think for the first time this year, we have some synergies going on, and Propeller, but I'm not familiar with the third. Could you talk about that?
Fund 17 is it's an organization that is trying to help very, very early stage entrepreneurs, like somebody who's just got like a light bulb that went over their head, you know, and they serve not all, but predominantly women. And yeah, it's they've been great, and so they're taking people with no business background, and they train them and give them a little loan. And I'll tell you one that just blows you away. There was a woman that lived in the housing projects, and she made great pralines. And so she had a tray, and she would sell them out of her window every morning, and they were gone in like 3 minutes. And they trained her a little bit, and then they bought her 2 more trays for pralines, and she's self-sufficient now. It was like $125. You know, I'm not talking about, you know, $1 million loans. Just a little bit of push can help, and that's what they do.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, there are times, as you said, and I love, thank you for being so honest, that maybe you didn't predict which ones would be the best financial success. What happened to Dinner Lab?
Oh, geez. Do you remember Dinner Lab?
Yeah.
They're in the book, and how many of y'all went to Dinner Lab? And I know a bunch of people in this room went and were raving about it. And it was just
fun.
so progressive and fun. And if you want to share the idea, and then I'd love to know what happened.
So that was like a dinner club sort of thing where they would set up chef prepared very special meals in sort of hidden away secret places like a warehouse somewhere or a balcony.
They did the roof of the One Shell Square.
Right.
And you didn't know till Thursday. It was like, it was great.
But and they did they start to scale? I can't remember.
Yeah,
they
that was the
They
thing.
started to get bigger and grow to other cities.
cities.
But it seemed like it was just not well enough funded and maybe not well enough organized, and it ended up falling apart. So that was kind of a disappointment. People were supposed to buy tickets to join it and then go to these things and have a special experience and meet other folks. And it was a really great idea, but it did not work out.
And they had you they mixed you with tables of people of different ages, which is kind of one of the big problems in life. And that was really, really cool. But they bought like I don't know what it was, maybe a $100,000 mobile kitchen that they would bring into these places. And they would hire like the second and third chef at a great restaurant that really wanted to show what they could do. It was, that's sad. There's a...
Yeah.
They don't
that was
make
just
it.
a super cool idea,
Sometimes
which
it
again,
happens.
begs the question, which I'm sure everybody in here is eager to hear what your take on it is. Like, what are the absolute to-dos that you have to get right if there's a promise of financial success? What do you think?
Beats me. They, no.
It's just so sort of unpredictable, really, the way it will work out.
One thing I've seen as a common denominator is they create a little advisory board, and
yes.
not necessarily their friends, not somebody that really is in their business, but somebody you respect for business decisions, and they meet them once a month or once a quarter at a Denny's or something, and do you meet at Denny's? Where do you meet them? your
So I
mom's
have an
club.
accounting, so that's interesting. So yeah, I have a bunch of peer advisory groups. I have the Moms Club that helps me how to be a great mom. I wouldn't be the mom I am without my Moms Club. And then Ann's in my advisory group. And then I have another advisory group with Taylor Morgan of the Scout Guide. So I did try to put together groups of women supporting women to try to, bounce ideas off of, whether it's business or whether it's with family. And there is a trend going on. I'm also an executive coach, and I'm a part of a group called 100 Coaches, and we meet every Monday globally. So it's the top coaches in the world, and to try to figure out what are the issues facing the top CEOs in the world and how can we best support them. And what we're seeing more and more of now is this interconnectivity in the world. We need each other now more than ever. We're in a loneliness epidemic. We feel disconnected. We feel isolated. We're still trying to crawl our way out, whether we want to admit it or not. 4 years later, we're trying to crawl ourselves out, and we need each other. So peer support groups are really, really beneficial right now, and so I would highly recommend. So I love it that you said that's one of the common denominators. They have advisors, right, helping them.
The other common denominator, when we were starting the show, my producer said, this isn't going to work because you're such a nice guy and you won't ask them about their failures. And one of the great things is they can't wait to tell you about their failures. It's like, I guess I was on drugs when I came up with that. But and one of the things that's true, and this is true relationships too, I think, is if you don't learn something from your failures or something you didn't like, there's really something wrong with you. I mean, it really should on the next round. And Annette, what about why they become entrepreneurs? Because that was your big part of the book. You really love it.
I think one thing you can't overlook is that a lot of people want to do some good in the world, especially here in New Orleans. There's a really strong sort of streak of wanting to improve outcomes in education, like this young man who just got up to speak. Exactly. One of my favorite stories in the book is the STEM Library Lab,
Yes.
which was a guy who he was a former teacher, and he realized that people didn't have the equipment to successfully teach science classes so much anymore, like, beakers and Bunsen burners and skeleton models and all that stuff. So he set up this library in Jefferson Parish, and teachers can come in and they can just borrow stuff for their classrooms. They don't have to have it all year. They only use it for maybe a month. And it's a great solution. And I assume he's getting, government funding for some of it. But he was able to start it. He's doing like little workshops. It's really it's a passion project and something that's going to make the world a better place, in my opinion. So.
Oh, I think
You're
he was
right.
true.
Purpose is driving everything these days, particularly with the millennials. The millennials did a great job of teaching the Generation Xers like us.
They're better people than we
They
were.
are so much better. They're so much better than us. They want to do good things in the world and make the world a better place, and purpose absolutely drives them, and work-family balance drives them, and they questioned everything, and thank goodness they did. And then the pandemic opened it up to, we all now realize with the Great Resignation, the Great Reprioritization, the Great Reevaluation, that we didn't have to work like we used to with so much burnout and having to show up inauthentically. And so I'm thrilled that there's this whole new world of work.
Let's face it, New Orleans invented the work-life balance. Right? When
Yes.
Jean Lafitte got here, that was like, oh, that's the first thing we're going to do. So,
That is so very true. So a lot of the millennials are in this book who said, we want to do things differently, and we want bigger purpose. And one of the other success stories in here, and I'm assuming they're still successful, those of us who've gotten married before, the money you spend on flowers, it's ridiculous, and then you throw them away, or you hope somebody saves them when you go off on your honeymoon and somebody's enjoying them. And this was a repurposing of flowers for events. Is that business still going strong?
Yeah, that business has really grown. Was it something borrowed blooms?
something
I think
borrowed
it's
blooms.
called.
And
Yeah, they rent beautiful silk flowers, and you can't tell
right,
the difference.
we had them on the table at Commander's in the white tablecloth. You couldn't tell. They're really, 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 really high-end artificial flowers. A lot of you are thinking like the plastic tulips your grandmother had on top of the TV. This is not what that is. And you could never tell the difference. And they send them out. I want you to imagine the margins. They send them out, somebody sets them up, and they send them back and forth. And I've been told that they are now doing hundreds of weddings a month. And this is what I love about the show, is that is people like, you know, what they always say is, you know, I could have thought of that. Yeah, but you didn't. That's really the important part of this story. And so it's...
Yeah, and speaking of do-gooders, there's a recycling, the glass.
Oh,
the glass
she's
half
awesome.
full. Talk to us about that. Thank goodness.
Oh, God.
Well, their Glass Half Full, it was started by Tulane students, and now they're actually providing recycling services in New Orleans. They collect glass from donors, volunteers collect it. They have a little factory. They have a factory now. They turn it into like little pebbles and gravel for garden landscaping, but they're also now moving into providing sand for sort of rebuilding the coast. So talk about a do-gooder project. They were sitting there over wine and like, well, what's going to happen to this wine bottle? There's no glass recycling here.
That's the way
Anyway,
ideas are
and
generated
so
in this town.
Doing a great thing and very successful.
And she was dating a guy in a fraternity house on Broadway, and they came up with this idea, and I think that is the only positive thing that's ever happened at a fraternity house. So just putting that out.
We have time for a couple more questions. We'd love to hear from you. Do not be shy of the microphone, please. We would love to hear from you. Thank you.
That's great.
Hello, my name is Nicola De Petra. I'm a freshman economics and Spanish major.
Cool.
I wanted to ask you guys, you have spoken to so many entrepreneurs. What are the biggest challenges that these people face in creating a successful company?
I mean,
Money.
money.
That is, yeah.
I just think the amount of time it takes
Absolutely.
to put in to start a business is really a big challenge.
And it's much more than you think. And then people will tell me, this is about the dumbest sentence you can put together. They go, you know, I'm so tired of working hard at this job. I want to be an entrepreneur. It's like, oh, I don't even want to tell you how this ends. And it's so yeah.
I think that's, you know, people have to be willing to put in the time, and a lot of them do it because they are either their backs are up against the wall, or you know, they're at a stage in their life where they can do that, where they can spend 24/7 working on a business.
And then,
so.
you know, they're, these start out as side hustles for the most part, you know, and then it's kind of an interesting point where you can decide, can I do just this? I mean, that's got to be frightening. And so I don't know. They have a certain spirit. I'm not going to, I would say that they're not, I don't want to say in a bad way, but they're not necessarily the top of the class in college, but they have a drive that isn't, you know, that isn't found anywhere else. So I think that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you gotta know your strengths, man. What are you really good at? And what sets you apart? What differentiates you? What are your superpowers? What are your passions? And then if you want to, then you gotta go after it. I've got to shout out to an incredibly talented person in the room, Sarah Costello.
All right.
Sarah Costello's here, and I mean,
Look under your
she's-
seat. I think you want a car. There's,
And Sarah Costello, she's a brilliant designer. And there were times when she was in New York and Domino magazine, and then she went to Tulane, so she came back here, which I love, and then worked a little bit here, and then found her design business again, and now she writes a column in the newspaper on design. You know, you just kind of have to figure out your life stage. Where are you in life? What do you really love doing? What do you have time to do? And how to make that all work together if there is that need and you can get the financial backing.
don't
And then
all
you
wanna
form the peer advisory
they
group.
don't want to necessarily be millionaires or Elon Musk. We were just talking about that. Some of the other reasons you're a good role model to your family.
You can provide employment for
Yeah.
people.
So there's a lot of different ways of measuring success in that business.
Yeah.
You know, Michelle and I and Annette can see the clock of how much time we have left. And I'm colorblind, and once I was giving a speech for Goldman Sachs. I don't know why they did this, but they put 3 traffic lights in front of me, red, yellow, green, and they all looked orange to me. And Goldman's like, what is wrong with him? You know, and who wants to get the hook? So these are digital, so we're in fine
So we have
shape.
1 minute to go, and I want to ask, is there any other question? I'll end the question. Oh, good. Come on up to the microphone. I love that. Hello, hello.
Hey, my name is Kenneth, and I'm a high school junior, and I'm starting a nonprofit that gives recognition to the Vietnamese student community, and we plan on holding an award ceremony over the summer. And I was wondering if there's any advice you could give on how to get people to invest in you and invest in your idea.
Like you're trying to get attendance at the event, or you're trying to get
More like
more
funding.
capital? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is the toughest role. I will tell you, there might be some bankers in the room, but a traditional bank loan is never going to work. You know, banks only lend money to people that don't need money, and I think you got to find. My big thing is to talk to other entrepreneurs, and because they're much more likely to lend. They get it, you know, and so I think that would be, or in business owners, particularly in the Vietnamese community, I think that would be a really, really good idea, and because they all, you know what it is? It's that they're thinking to myself, I was where you are 10 years ago, and if that doesn't warm me up, and I mean, it's always going to warm me up. I mean, that's what they want to give back. So I think it'd be, you know, maybe you have to talk to 20 different businesses, but a couple will be good for you. Yeah.
Oh, thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for being here. Our time is up.